Two people buy the exact same S&P 500 ETF on the exact same morning with the exact same money. 20 years later, one of them has well over $100,000 more than the other. Same fund, same market, same contributions. So what on earth happened? They got two invisible decisions right, two decisions almost nobody talks about because everyone is too busy arguing about which hot stock to pick. Today, I'm going to hand you the 3 ETFs that belong at the core of almost any American portfolio, and then I'm going to show you the 2 quiet decisions, which account you hold them in, and which version of the fund you buy. That decide how much of your money you actually get to keep. Get these right and you don't need to pick a single winning stock. Get them wrong and you hand a small fortune to the IRS and to fund companies for absolutely nothing. Let's go. Let's start with what to actually buy, because this part is simpler than the gurus want you to believe. You do not need 40 tickers and a spreadsheet. For most Americans building long-term wealth, 3 ETFs cover it. Number 1, the Foundation and S&P 500 fund. This is the big one. 500 of America's largest companies in a single fund. Apple, Microsoft, the whole engine of the US economy in one click. If you bought nothing else, ever, just this one fund, you would be doing better than most investors in the country. Warren Buffett literally instructed his own family to put their money in a low-cost S&P 500 fund and walk away. That is your base. It is boring, it is instantly diversified, and it has quietly made more everyday American millionaires than any hot stock tip ever will. Number 2, for growth, a Nasdaq 100 fund. This one leans hard into technology, the Apples and Nvidias of the world, so it swings harder in both directions. More upside when tech runs hot, more pain when it pulls back. If you're young and you have decades to ride out the bumps, a slice of this bolts a growth kicker on top of your foundation. Number 3, for income, a dividend-growth fund like SCHD. This one holds solid, established American companies that pay you a steadily rising dividend, real cash landing in your account. It won't shoot the lights out, but it pays you along the way, and it's a workhorse for anyone who wants income, especially as you get closer to retirement. There's your whole toolkit. A base, a growth kicker, and an income engine. Honestly, you can hold just the S&P 500 fund and be perfectly fine, or you can blend all 3, something like 60% in the S&P, 20 in the Nasdaq, 20 in the dividend fund, and tilt those numbers to match your age and your stomach. A 25-year-old might lean heavier on the S&P and the Nasdaq for growth and barely touch the dividend fund. Someone near retirement might flip it, leaning on that dividend income and dialing the volatility down. Same 3 tools, different mix for different seasons of life. Once a year, you nudge it back to your target and you're done. Simple. But here's where the real money is made or lost, and it has nothing to do with which of those 3 you pick. Decision 1, which account you hold these in. This has a name the pros use, asset location, and it might be the single most underrated move in all of personal finance. Fund selection gets all the attention, but where you hold that fund can matter just as much as what you hold, because the exact same fund paying the exact same dividends is taxed completely differently depending on the account it lives in. Watch this. Hold that dividend fund in a regular taxable brokerage account, and every single year, those dividends land on your tax return, and you owe tax on them, whether you spent them or reinvested every penny. Then sell your S&P 500 fund years later for a gain, and you owe capital gains tax on top. That's a tax drag, chipping away at you every year, quietly slowing your compounding down. Picture $100,000 throwing off $2,000 in dividends. At a 15% rate, that's $300 handed to the IRS every year you hold it. And that number only climbs as your balance grows. It doesn't sound like much until you realize it's happening every single year for the rest of your life. Now hold that same fund in a traditional 401k or IRA. No tax every year. It grows completely undisturbed and you only settle up as ordinary income when you withdraw in retirement. Better. But hold it in a Roth IRA, and this is the magic one. Those dividends, never taxed. That growth, never taxed. You pull it all out in retirement completely tax-free, and it doesn't even count as income, so it can't spike your Medicare premiums or your health insurance costs down the line. Same fund, same dividends. In one account, the IRS takes a bite every single year, and in another, it never touches it, not once. So here's the simple rule of thumb. Your highest taxed, highest dividend, and highest growth holdings want to live inside that Roth, where their gains are shielded forever. That dividend fund that would get taxed every year in a brokerage account, it's a prime candidate for the Roth. The high growth Nasdaq fund, decades of tax-free gains, also a beautiful Roth holding. This one decision, same fund, better account can be worth six figures over a lifetime, and it costs you nothing but knowing to do it. And most people get it exactly backwards, parking their most heavily taxed investments in the one account where the tax hits hardest. Quick honest caveat, if you expect to be in a lower tax bracket in retirement than you are today, that traditional pre-tax account can actually beat the Roth. So it's not always Roth or nothing. But the point stands. The account is a decision, not an afterthought. Decision 2 is smaller, but free money is free money. Once you've decided you want, say, an S&P 500 fund, you'll find several companies selling you the exact same index. Same 500 stocks, same returns, different sticker price. That sticker price is the expense ratio, the tiny annual fee the fund company quietly skims off the top, and they are not all the same. One popular S&P 500 fund charges around 0.09% a year. Another one tracks the identical index for 0.03. Sounds like nothing, right? Here's why it isn't nothing. That fee comes out every year, automatically. Whether the market is up or down on your entire balance. On a growing six-figure account over 30 years, the gap between the cheap fund and the pricey one adds up to thousands of dollars. Hand it over for the identical product. You see the same thing with Nasdaq funds, where one version might charge 0.01%, while a nearly identical one charges 15. On $100,000, that's $200 a year versus $150. For holding the very same companies, it is like paying full price for the exact same groceries at two different stores just because you didn't check the tag. So when two funds track the same index, you glance at one number, the expense ratio, you take the cheaper one, and you just make sure it's large and heavily traded so it's easy to buy and sell. That's the entire skill. Nobody hands you a medal for overpaying. Now, the part that actually decides whether any of this works. Consistency. You do not need to time the market, and trying to is exactly how most people lose. Pick your funds, hold them in the right accounts, and then buy on a schedule every single paycheck in good markets and in terrifying ones. That is dollar cost averaging, and when the market drops, it isn't a disaster. It's the same money buying more shares on sale. Automate the whole thing so you never have to think about it or talk yourself out of it. Max out that Roth every year you can, and if you earn too much to contribute directly, look up the backdoor Roth. Grab your full 401k match. Then let the low costs, the tax shelter, and the compounding stack on top of each other for a couple of decades. Boring, automatic, relentless. And keep one more thing in the back of your mind. Inflation. The comfortable number you're picturing today will buy less in 20 years, which is exactly why you want your money in growth assets, held cheaply, inside accounts the tax man can't raid. You are not trying to be a genius stock picker here. You are just refusing to leak money where you don't have to. So there it is, 3 ETFs for the core, a base, a growth kicker, and an income engine. Then the two decisions that actually decide how much you keep. Hold them in the right account, especially that Roth, and buy the cheapest version of each. Nail those, and you are already miles ahead of the vast majority of investors who obsess over tickers while ignoring the two things that truly move the needle. If this finally made the whole thing click for you, do me a favor and smash that like button so it reaches more people who are tired of overcomplicating their money, and hit subscribe. And since fees, tax rules, and contribution limits all shift over time, always check the current numbers before you build your plan. I'll see you in the next one.